I've been loving my Series S. What a sexy looking console this is. 3 months of Game Pass for €1 is a fecking steal. Last time we checked out Halo 1, so I would suggest watching that. And speaking of it, the video did so well, so thanks to each and every one of you who watched it. So with Halo Infinite releasing hopefully this year, I want to play through the whole series. Halo 1 was a great start to the series, but let's see if Bungie fix some of the issues with the sequel. Here is a PlayStation Fanboy on Halo 2. Released in 2002, Bungie had big boots to fill. How in God's name could a studio successfully follow up from the smash hit that was Combat Evolved? Well, they did it by improving gameplay in so many ways, boasting a multiplayer mode that took the world by storm. Moving forward, that is one thing that I'll miss from the true Xbox experience. Games like Halo and Gears are praised for the multiplayer modes, and while I can still play them, I won't get the same experience as launching Xbox Live on my original Xbox or 360. While I had my fun with Little Big Planet, MAG and Mod Nation Racers, Xbox were the kings of multiplayer during this time. Luckily for Bungie, Halo 2 was an even bigger success and right now is the best selling original Xbox game ever, so fair play to them for that. The game opens up with these amazing CG cutscenes, which I was going to make a point about until I realised are only in the Masterchief Collection. Now this is a good thing because these in-game cutscenes from the original are fecking ugly. With or without these cutscenes, Halo 2's story is so much more involved and I loved it. I'm completely invested in the world of Halo and I'm about a third into the Fall of Reach book. Seeing the religious slant of the Covenant is interesting. From what I gathered from the original, they were just some military force who didn't like Master Chief and all of his mates. But this adds so much complexity to them. Knowing they're attacking the humans on the orders of some earthworm Jim looking feckers makes the stakes a lot higher, because we all know what can happen when religious figures become cult-like heroes. Since the original was very light in the cutscene department, it didn't establish much about the Covenant or the Flood, but what it highlighted was the relationship between Chief and Cortana, and it's back in full swing in the sequel. They give off a married coupled vibe, and the thoughts of an AI and some super soldier being in an 80s sitcom is quite funny.
You look nice.
Thank you.
Now the best part. When I first took control of Chief and realised I could dual wield, my mind was blown. Other than the rifles and shotguns, I felt like the Covenant weapons in Halo 1 were fairly useless. But now you can dual wield 2 of these yokes and just rip through your enemies like they're nothing. Already there's a marked improvement on gameplay from the get-go. Fighting in space with the muffled sound was really atmospheric, and then moving onto Earth was fantastic. It's clear to see that Bungie wanted Halo 2 to feel and look different from the start, and this is most evident by visiting Earth for your first mission. While the levels in Halo 1 were interesting, they started to get a bit stale near the end of my playthrough. Switching it up like this was great. I could already see that this is the same leap as Uncharted 2 had to Uncharted 1. Both of these original games are big budget titles but probably ran out of time to do what they really wanted to do. They set up good bases to build upon and then they feckin' bamboozle it out of the park with the sequels. One thing I forgot to mention in the first video was how engaging the gameplay loop in Halo is. Yes, we know guns feel great and enemies are fun to kill, if not a bit spongy. But the constant loop of picking up new weapons because you're out of ammo forces you to use all sorts of weapons. And while I had my favourites, I was forced to use the crappy ones in certain situations just because I didn't manage my ammo well enough. In other shooters like COD or Battlefield, you have one weapon in a level and that's the one you typically stick with. But Halo's style gives you something to think about outside of just go from point A, shoot something and then go to point B. While we're on the topic of weapons, I love them in this game. We have the typical shotgun, the MA2B rifle and the pistol. But the new additions are great, the battle rifle and the SMG being my favourites. I never gravitated towards the alien weapons, but I enjoyed the carbine when I got a chance to use it. Now you probably thought I wasn't going to mention it. You know them iconic game weapons, the Master Sword, Golden Gun, Rhino. Yes, I had to get some PlayStation mention in here. Well, Halo says feck off to all these weapons and let you slice through your enemies with the Energy Sword. Remember Commando Pro in Modern Warfare 2? Well, this is that on steroids. Obviously I knew about this weapon, but feck me, it feels great to use. I just wish I had a chance to use it in multiplayer. Now let's have a little chat about the not so good parts. There's 3 things I want to highlight here. You notice the game relies on vehicles a lot, and I mean a lot. There are missions that are mostly driving, and while the Warthog has been improved, it's still quite frustrating to control. With only a few vehicles at your disposal, these became very boring. The second thing I want to mention are these stupid lift sections, where you're on a platform for ages just waiting for enemies to spawn. They're extremely bland. Now, there are less of these than the first one, but seriously, just sitting on a lift and waiting for a wave of enemies to spawn and then killing them, and then probably waiting for like another 30 seconds before more spawn is just boring. The final thing is the spongy enemies. These brutes take some amount of ammo. It felt like every single one of them took about 147 bullets before they die. and it kinda ruined the gameplay for me near the end. They're cool enemies, and I'm sure there's a reason for them to be so spongy, but it just doesn't make for fun gameplay. Throughout the game, you switch between Master Chief and the Arbiter, a Covenant elite who has been sent on a suicide mission to try kill Master Chief, or the Demon which the Covenant have nicknamed him. I just think that's really cool that they have their own name for him, just showing how much of a nuisance he is. The change of perspective was welcome, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't cool fighting alongside these lads who all too often destroyed me in the original game. Look, Master Chief is a feckin' badass, but the Arbiter is cooler. I absolutely love his voice, and seeing him help the Chief in the UNSC was great. Definitely a brilliant character to add to the series. It's not only him being cool, it's also nice seeing a Covenant that isn't just hellbent on killing. Now let's talk about one of the strangest parts of the story. At one point, Chief and the Arbiter are captured by the Great Mighty Pooh, a rhyming lump of tentacly goodness perfect for any weebs out there. But all joking aside, this reminded me of Star Wars for some reason. It was the moment of humour sprinkled into an otherwise serious plot that breaks up the pace. The Hive were pretty terrifying, but finding out it's actually intelligent and could give Dr. Seuss a run for his money makes them even more scary. Now after all this, the game ends on another cliffhanger. It leaves us with two questions. What's going to happen to Cortana, and what will this tentacly fecker do? Find out next on Halo 3. I have finished Halo 3 as of writing the script, so I do know what happens because I just couldn't stay away. This franchise is special, and I'm so glad I jumped into it. As a sequel, Halo 2 does basically everything right. Shooting feels better, new weapons add a lot of variety, and these new CG cutscenes add a nice flavour to the story that wasn't there in the original. And the best thing this game does is it expands on the Covenant and the Flood, making them way more interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really trying to make this series the best that it possibly can be, so if you have any feedback, please let me know. I really appreciate you watching and would love to see you subscribe to the channel. See you all in the next video.